This is Everybody Pulls the Tarp with your host, Andrew Moses. Each week, Andrew talks with Olympians, pro athletes, TV stars, Grammy winners, best-selling authors, CEOs, and other high performers to uncover their success secrets.
My guest is Washington Commanders running back Austin Ekeler.
Every day we write a page of our life. The best thing is you have the pen in your hand.
Three-time Olympic gold medalist Tessa Virtue. Welcome back to Everybody Pulls the Tarp.
Thanks for thinking of me, and I'm a big fan of the podcast and of yours. So anytime you text or call, I'm here.
Mike Mills from REM.
The key to that was realizing at some point fairly early on that this was probably our life's work.
Every conversation is jam-packed with inspiration and actionable ideas.
My guest is 2023 WNBA Coach of the Year, Stephanie White.
The hardest thing for a coach is trying to prioritize how much time you put in one area or another.
Former MLB player, coach, and manager Clint Hurdle.
That is the best title of any podcast out there in America, and the content matches up to it. Andrew, you do a fantastic job. I'm a big fan. Keep up the great work.
World-renowned organizing expert Shira Gill.
You can improve your life simply by removing things.
Get ready for a behind-the-scenes look at the techniques, processes, and mindsets powering the world's most successful people.
Let's go. Hi, friends, and welcome back to Everybody Pulls the Tarp. Well, listeners, this week my guest is Dave Raymond. Dave is the original Phillie Phanatic and served as the legendary and iconic Philadelphia Phillies mascot from 1978 all the way to 1994. Dave is credited with creating the personality for the most celebrated and beloved mascot in sports history. Dave has entertained millions of people around the globe and redefined the world of mascots and live character performances for generations to come. Today, Dave is an entrepreneur and keynote speaker, educating and inspiring audiences about positive psychology. In addition to his work as the Phillie Phanatic, Dave also has more than 25 years of experience helping companies and teams develop their own mascots. And Dave has played a part in creating more than 120 mascots throughout his career. Now, let me get this episode all set up for you. A few months ago, Dave and I met one evening on the train. Our train outbound from New York City had assigned seats, and Dave and I were fortuitously seated next to one another. We got to chatting and quickly became fast friends. We discovered a shared passion around so many topics: how we value family, the importance of hard work, the power of creativity, and what's possible when we dedicate ourselves to serving others. Well, there was also another topic that we connected around. I told Dave about my summer working in minor league baseball, the experience that was the initial foundation for what I've since turned into the Everybody Pulls the Tarp mindset that we explore every single week on this podcast. I went into that summer internship working in minor league baseball over 20 years ago, expecting to spend 99% of my time in an office learning the business of sports. But because minor league organizations typically have much smaller budgets and way less personnel than their big league counterparts, I quickly found myself helping out in a variety of other different ways outside of the quote-unquote office. That summer I worked in minor league baseball. I parked cars, inflated moon bounces, painted the clubhouse, cleaned up fireworks debris in the outfield, sold souvenirs in the stands, and so much more. And of course, I worked with the grounds crew to pull the tarp on and off the field. After all, in the minor leagues, everybody pulls the tarp. But as I shared with Dave on that train, for a short time that summer, I also served in an additional capacity when I dressed as the team's mascot for about a week or two, while the main mascot was away on vacation. Now, with all of these topics that Dave and I connected on, it is probably no surprise that our time on the train together flew by. Before we knew it, Dave and I were each at our respective destinations, and as I drove home from the train station, I continued to think about our conversation. I had more questions for Dave, and additional ideas that I felt compelled to explore further. So, I reached out to Dave and asked him if we could dig into his journey even more, right here on Everybody Pulls the Tarp. Well, Dave graciously agreed, and we recorded the conversation you are about to hear. We explored Dave's journey and many of the moments and experiences that have shaped him both personally and professionally. You will hear Dave share the behind-the-scenes story of how he became the Phillie Phanatic and what it took to turn that character into the most famous and beloved mascot in sports history. Our conversation is filled with powerful career and life lessons about building something from the ground up, redefining expectations, adapting on the fly, and so much more. And in one of the most powerful moments we've ever heard here on Everybody Pulls the Tarp, Dave shared why serving as the Phillie Phanatic helped to literally save his life. Listeners, as always, this podcast is presented solely for educational and entertainment purposes. It is not intended to be a substitute for the advice of a physician, psychotherapist, or other qualified professional. Additionally, I want to share a trigger warning for this episode in particular. This episode contains extensive discussion of suicide, self-harm, and related matters. If you are in need of help, please contact the National Suicide Prevention Hotline at 800-273-TALK or visit your nearest emergency room. With that, it's time for this week's episode. So, let's pull the tarp and get straight to Dave Raymond. Dave, welcome to Everybody Pulls the Tarp.
Andrew, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, and I certainly love the title. I would have joined this podcast just because of the title, but we had a fortuitous surprise meeting on a train coming back from New York to my home in southern New Jersey, and it just has been kismet ever since. So this has been a while since we met, but I'm thrilled that we're finally here.
So let's start with a question that I wish I had asked you on the train. You call yourself the hero of happiness. I am curious, Dave, what is the biggest misconception that people have about the idea of happiness?
Well, I think, and by the way, self-appointed title, it was not. I was dubbed that by the media, so I picked up on it. Well, I think people in general probably or may think that their job is to search for and find happiness, when it's really not something you search for. It is a skill set that you can attain through practice. These are simple steps that are unfortunately difficult to make part of people's everyday lives. And that's really what I talk about and what I teach is about building on that skill set.
One of the common themes, Dave, and I think we talked about this a little bit during our first conversation on that train, the idea that comes up so often in my conversations with the world's top performers is that so often the path to success is about doing simple things that are not easy, that there's a big distinction between simple and easy. And I think when you describe kind of some of the building blocks of happiness that I'm sure we'll talk about, it's again, like you said, that same idea, simple but not easy.
And it really is because our minds are really misunderstood. A lot of the research and science in the brain is yet to really discover all that our brains can do and are doing for us. And in some cases, unfortunately, against this concept of building on well-being. And it's really hard because in order to do these things, you do have to understand how your brain is affecting you. And then you have to, in a sense, rewire your brain to be able to follow some of the things that you want to do, that evolution has pre-programmed it not to enjoy or not to think it is important. So that's all it's not that people don't want to do this. It's not that people, especially high performers, they understand how to get dirty, get their the dirt in their fingernails and dig down deep and do things that are important for them to succeed. But it really requires you to understand what your brain is doing to stop you from doing that before you get the opportunity to really train your brain for the effect of well-being and positive psychology, teaching the science of happiness. These are all things that our brain is not an ally.
Dave, I want to dig into your story a little bit more. I want to go back to, I think it was about 1976. This is really where your journey as the Phillie Phanatic starts in many ways, with a 2-year internship with the Phillies. My Everybody Pulls the Tarp story really started with a internship. It wasn't in Major League Baseball. It was an internship in minor league baseball. And a lot of the Everybody Pulls the Tarp idea is based off of the fact that summer I worked in minor league baseball. I did whatever was asked of me. I dressed as the mascot for a couple of days, not as many days as you did over the course of your career, but I dressed as the mascot for a handful of days. I sold merchandise. I cleaned debris up from center field. I drove players to the airport. I inflated the moon bounces. I deflated the moon bounces. I worked in the parking lot. I did everything that was asked of me. And it was one of the greatest experiences of my life and career to this point. So I'm curious. I recall you telling me a similar story. In 1976, you had an internship with the Phillies and you basically were doing whatever was asked of you. Talk about that internship, the experience, and then the lead up to trying on that Phillie Phanatic suit for the first time.
Well, let me make this public now because I think we did it on the train. When you mentioned that you got dressed up as the mascot, that puts you into what we call our fraternity. So you remember forever of that fraternity. So thank you for joining. My upbringing was having a very successful Hall of Fame, college football Hall of Fame football coach for a father. And really all I wanted to do my whole life, I didn't care about going to college for an education. I just wanted to be him. And he was at the University of Delaware for coaching for almost 50 years. And he clearly pointed out to me that I will help you get into coaching, but it's different now. You'll have to move your family all over the country multiple times to possibly find the place where you'll be successful as a coach. So he said, which I'm willing to do. And if you're willing to go through that, then great. But in the meantime, and I was a sophomore playing football for him at the time, he said, let me help you get a job with the Phillies because he had access. Malcolm Gladwell's book Outliers really connects with me. And he said, go do whatever they ask you to do. And his comment from a football coaching perspective was, prove your value, then you will be valuable. So I went there and was working in promotions. So the silly wackiness of pregame and in between double headers and in the space during inning breaks, there was, a lot of silliness that my boss's boss, Bill Giles, was my mentor in this regard. He created a lot of this stuff to get non-baseball fans to be in the environment where they become baseball fans. And in that year, obviously, there's no Phanatic. And my pull the tarp moment was I got to know the ground crew. They were my best friends. I enjoyed being around them. I realized how much the players appreciated them because they were getting the field ready for them and specifically the pitchers. So I hung around with them. And one of the things that we had to do as a whole organization was 4th of July fireworks was just coming into the fold as being one of the most high-tech demonstrations of fun around the ballpark. Well, at the end of the 4th of July celebration, and sometimes it was a doubleheader, that in between the games, after the first game and dusk hit, they did the fireworks and then they played the second game. We had to, everybody in the organization, this is a major league organization, had to go out and pick up all the little debris from the fireworks that fell on the field to clean it up. So it was something that I've seen throughout my life. It's something I was trained to do because of my father's influence. And it was an amazing opportunity. So when I got there, I did all those things. And it was this 2 years. The first year in 76, they were hosting the All-Star game like the Phillies are doing this coming season. So there was a ton of work to do. I was doing all kinds of things. I was collecting All-Star ballots. I was cleaning toilets. I was picking up debris from the fireworks shows. Anything they asked me to do, I did. And then come 1977, my second year, there wasn't a lot for me to do. And I thought, well, they're not going to offer me a job. I'm not coming back. I have to finish school. And when I was back in school very early in 78, the Phillies actually called me and said, we want you to come back. And I said, yes, right. Okay, I'm in. What do you want me to do? And that's when they said to me, Andrew, you need to go to New York and get fitted for the costume, which now, okay, that makes sense. But back then, there was no clue of what that meant. And when I protested just a little bit, they said, just go to New York and get fitted for the costume. We'll go from there. And I went to New York. I walked into this studio that was like Geppetto's puppet studio. It was so amazing. And all these creative people and disembodied heads and eyeballs and foam and fur and the smell of glue and all of this stuff. And then I realized I was meeting the Muppet people. I was meeting the woman who ran the studio, owned the studio. Her name is Bonnie Erickson, and she was one of Jim Henson's original designers. And I thought, oh my gosh, when I started to realize the gravity of what I walked into was they told me to show up. I wasn't prepared to audition. And then Bonnie said, no, we just need to measure you. 20 minutes, said, get out of here. And that's the first time I saw the design drawing that Bonnie and Bill Giles had created together. And that's when I realized, oh my gosh, they're paying me to be a Muppet. And I was thrilled beyond belief. I wasn't nervous at all until a little bit later. That's kind of the rest of the story, as they say.
Dave, I'm curious. I mean, just to kind of like set the time for us, because I think now, thanks in large part to you and your efforts, there are mascots everywhere. You know, sports teams, different brands have mascots. I think there's like a full appreciation for the idea of a mascot. But at that time, if I'm not mistaken, there weren't mascots across Major League Baseball and across sports. Maybe the Padres had the chicken at the time, if I'm not mistaken. Talk about that. Like, the whole idea was new in many ways at that point. How did you process all that?
Yeah, well, and creating a green Muppet for the Philadelphia fans, who we've been tagged with the Kleenex brand of bad fan behavior. So there was that too. But then, and frankly, the Padres didn't have the chicken. The chicken came to them. And so they weren't sponsoring the chicken. It actually was a radio station that brought in a kid dressed in a chicken suit. That kid's name was Ted Gianolis. And he's the one that eventually, during hard work and talent, really made the chicken a famous character. During that time, the players were just saying, wow, this guy's nuts. And they were appreciating the fact that he was just running around ad hoc, spontaneously engaging with fans that were mostly military. The players used to call San Diego a military base that had a beach. So that was San Diego. And the players started recognizing it. And actually our executives, junior executives that traveled came back and kept telling Bill Giles, we need to do this for ourselves. We're the ones that are creating new content in this environment. We should create a mascot for us. Took some convincing, but Bill jumped on full force. And so it was brand new. And there was the benefits of it being brand new is they weren't expecting it. The Phillies decided not to really pre-promote it as something that they created. And I was just told to go out on the first day, April 25th, 1978, and enjoy myself and have fun. That's because when I went to Bill and said, wait, I don't know, show up. They don't know I'm a Phillies fan. I am. I had the heartbeat of a Phillies fan in my chest. And I knew I could do this, but I got concerned about them not knowing that I was one of them. And Bill just said, nah, don't worry about it. Just go out there and have a good time. And then I went tearing out of his office all excited, and he screamed at me my first editing. He said, G-rated fun, David, G-rated fun, because college student, professional idiot, maybe a little bit off color in whatever I would come up with that I thought was fun. But I followed that. I mean, and Bill became a collaborator with me, a 21-year-old kid, with something that grew into the biggest marketing success that the Phillies could have ever hoped for, is going to be around long after I'm gone. And it came from that beginning and that directive, which is why I value what we call powerful fun. Didn't know what that was at the time, but Bill said, forget about your concerns, go and enjoy yourself. If you're not having fun, it won't work. And then I said, well, I know how to have fun. And then he said, well, make sure it's G-rated fun. And that, I truly believe, there's no question that directive, that prime directive, is what has driven all of the success of the Phanatic. And it's what saved my life. It's what has created my North Star in terms of teaching people how to build their well-being and build unsustainable happiness. All came from that first brief encounter where I see a guy who is my boss's boss, who I'm looking up to, who became my first mentor, my first adult friend. And he said, go out and enjoy yourself, have fun, because if you're not having fun, this type of effort won't work. And I just think that is a great directive for life, especially when it gets tough.
So in addition to the idea of having fun, G-rated fun, talk about the idea of building something without a blueprint. I think there's lots of people listening that may not be doing what you did, but they're embarking on or thinking about embarking on something that there's no blueprint for. Talk about what else you did in those early days when there was no instruction manual, there was no university, there was no academy, there was no blueprint. How did you get this idea, this character built in the early days?
Well, it's a great question. And certainly I didn't know until many, many years later what skill sets I had that I was doing naturally, which is a great lesson for leadership, is go back in your life and see if there's a skill set that you haven't engaged in a while that you do naturally. And the reason why you haven't engaged it in a while is that you don't value it because it comes to you naturally. That I'll get to that, learning that what that was in a bit. But for me, there was a blueprint. So Bill Giles decided we have 60,000 people coming into this new stadium, Veterans Stadium. It now, Citizens Bank Park is filled with 43,000 people and it's sold out. So another 20,000 or so, they needed to get in there. So we need non-baseball fans to be attracted. So let's have fun. Let's enjoy ourselves at all the times that we can. And then the baseball operations will work on, the owners at the time, the Carpenter family and baseball operations will focus on wins. So what I did was I went out there and what was fun for me, that's all I had to pull from. So the cartoons, Foghorn Leghorn, Daffy Duck, the Three Stooges, slapstick humor, those were all big for me in my development as a child. And that's what I watched and that's what I loved. So I decided to be a little bit of a mashup of all of those. Daffy Duck would bounce around. He'd go, woohoo, woohoo, and then he would stop, look at you, grab you from the back of the neck and lay a big kiss in your face. And in the cartoons, you'd see saliva shoot out. And then he would leave you and go, woohoo, woohoo, and bounce off the walls, literally, and then get to the next victim. So I thought, well, I need to be frenetic. I need to bounce around. I need to grab people and hug them. And I felt that I wanted to be a frenetic but loving character. And then with a little bit of the snarkiness of a Philadelphia fan, I wasn't thinking that way, but that just leaked out. So when I saw a Mets hat on a Mets fan, oh man, I'm going to go destroy that hat. And then I learned, well, I could also destroy the hat kind of, but get it back to them. So it would be in good-natured fun. So again, some G-rated fun rather than violence. And I just started testing it out. And I had a beautiful proving ground because I just showed up. No one had a clue that they thought some fan came there with a homemade costume. For me, the costume, I was lucky. It looked like a Muppet. And so the first time I ran down and I started like at what the 200 level was, but you had to go down a lot of steps to get to the main railing between the stands and the field. And by the time I got there, I was exhausted, Andrew. I was thinking, I'm a football player, double sessions, I'm in great shape. No, 15 minutes, I was ready to die. And then the inning ended. So when the inning ended, I said, I'm not walking all the way back up the steps. So I just jumped over the railing to run to get to the big opening behind home plate where the ground crew would come out and service people would come out. I could get out that way, and it was close to where my, temporary break room was at the time. And people went nuts. And then I go, oh, well, I probably should jump on the field more. And one of the umpires waved at me and I waved back. They thought that was hysterical. And I went, okay, now I realize what I need to do is I need to bring the field personnel figuratively into the stands by me going there and interacting with them and then coming sitting next to you and your kids. And I realized breaking that wall became a really important component. And for me, it was a thrill because now I get to actually get to know the players. And we just followed that program as long as it was G-rated fun. And as long as I stuck to the rules, which at the time there were no rules for mascots, I kind of made the rules. And Bill then would advocate for my ability to do things that they were saying you can't do because I had been doing it. And we've been doing it successfully. So a couple of guardrails we'll put on. Don't ever delay the game. If you do, we'll restrict what you can do. And we just never broke those rules. And so the blueprint was to enjoy yourself, have fun. This was for non-baseball fans. Do whatever you felt the fans were reacting to, and then cut all the things they weren't reacting to. And I had a long rope as long as I didn't break the main directive, which was it has to be G-rated. And it just worked seamlessly. And I thought, hey, anybody can do this. I was just lucky enough to get the job. But it was that skill set that I wasn't aware was working for me that was really taught to me by my mom, which was because she was deaf. And she went deaf when I was 3 years old. And so again, Malcolm Gladwell's Outliers, I had hundreds of thousands of hours of practice honing a nonverbal skill that I had no idea would be valuable to me. And that's what I believe. I was physical. I was a great dancer. I understood the sport exceptionally well because I played it at a high level, understood the mental makeup of an athlete, especially highly skilled athletes. had the rigor of my dad's directive about working hard at the things you do. And all of those came together. And I was given the opportunity to create a personality that continues to live today. And that personality is a big dose of the snarkiness and the insecurity of a Phillies fan. And then a bunch of the Three Stooges and Daffy Duck and cartoon characters that I loved. And then the beauty was my mom gave me the skill set that really made me one of the best at doing this.
All right, everyone. We'll get back to the conversation momentarily. But first, I want to tell you about my free weekly email newsletter, Tarp Pullers. Each week, I share an uplifting and inspirational tarp pulling story that is sure to brighten your day. And I also highlight some of the most powerful ideas I've learned on my journey talking to 200 and counting of the world's top performers. The newsletter is short, concise, and a reader recently told me this. She said it makes her day every time it hits her inbox. Go to everybodypullsthetarp.com/newsletter to sign up today. I want to dive deeper into that, Dave. The idea of nonverbal communication and obviously all of the experience and thousands of hours that you described, having essentially to learn that so that you could communicate and in many ways entertain and engage with your mom all those years. What's something about nonverbal communication that people get wrong?
Well, I think most of the time what they get wrong is they don't realize that it's one of your greatest ways to connect to another human being deeply, emotionally. People aren't going to hear what you say, but they're going to remember what you do. And most of nonverbal are the doing of things. It's the movement. So simple things like smiling, it is the strongest evolutionary nonverbal skill we were given that can do just that. Give you a welcoming feeling, a welcoming emotion, acceptance, and connecting. Looking at people in the eyes. And for all those of you out there, you want to be good in sales, you want to be good as a leader. Look in the people's eyes when you talk to, and don't avert your gaze. Your brain will tell you to avert your gaze because it's talking about actually looking for threats. So you're not meant to gaze at something and be totally zeroly focused with your attention on one thing. Your mind keeps wanting you to move your gaze. That suggests to people that you're not paying attention. And then, of course, the listening and in tuning into that and mirroring people's physical stance, these are all really, really deeply ingrained ways to connect to people on an emotional level. The Phanatic did it so well because all of the time when I was looking for something that was a person that I wanted to work with, when I worked with them, I was focused directly on them, a kid, an adult, whoever it was. And I started to build archetypes, the big, strong guy, the beautiful woman, the cute little kid, the bratty kid. And all of my attention was given to them and their focus. And they felt seen, heard. And, and if you want to make your friends believe that you are listening to them, look at them in the eyes. You can even fake it. I don't recommend it, especially with children. You can fake it, like a lot of parents do when they're multitasking, is just look them in the eyes. So the doing of nonverbal is at least 50% of positive communication technique. And it can be negative when you don't understand that you're not doing simple things. And it's been a beautiful thing for me to have. So when people are delivering American Sign Language to deaf people that have no verbal skills, they don't just say, which is, you're beautiful. You're beautiful. And I love the deaf. This is deaf applause. Jazz hands is deaf applause. So you'll be in a room full of deaf folks when they're showing you appreciation. They do that because the clapping is not something that they can hear or feel. So it's a beautiful convergence of all of these skills happening at the same time without me understanding them, that now I feel really motivated in a deep, meaningful way is to go to communicate this to my audiences.
Dave, I am curious, at what point, April 1978, you get into the costume for the first time. How long did it take before you felt like you had gotten comfortable and that you had essentially a brand or a character that at that point would have something to lose via a mistake?
Yeah.
Or whatever.
It's a great question. Well, I felt comfortable as soon as I was able to capture the fitness required. So that was maybe 3 weeks to a month. Then I got comfortable because when Bill was saying, if you're not having fun, it won't work. So I wasn't having fun when I was feeling sick to my stomach because of the heat. So I realized I needed to take breaks. And once I got that rhythm down, about a month, I was comfortable. But I still hadn't completely ingrained another personality that would take over my being. And truly, when I got there, Dave Raymond would float away. My personality, my being would go away. And I became the Phanatic. And the Phanatic was no longer Dave. The Phanatic was the Phanatic. That took about a year. And I would say by the end of the first year, I was starting to realize, oh, this is really great to turn this on and I disappear. It's a flow state. That's actually healthy. I got to disappear in another personality. It gave me license to do things that most likely I might get arrested, because most of what the Phanatic did was illegal. It was assault. You were going and physically connecting with someone without their permission. But everyone wanted to be assaulted by the Phanatic. It was a right.
Rubbing the bald guy's head, stealing the hat, holding. You've held babies that you weren't supposed to, if I recall.
Yeah, and that's when the editing started to come in, because I would look at these things that when I started to see videos, because in the beginning you couldn't see video, you could only watch film, and it took quite a while after you did something to see film. When video started coming in, I could quickly look at what I did. And when I would see that I would pick up this baby, one of my favorite routines was to get up on the dugout. That was the Phillies dugout, or just after the 7th inning, singing "Take Me Out to the Ball Game." That following half inning, I would work the crowd on the dugout, and I love to find parents with an infant, a baby, and I would pick up the baby and I would be paying attention to the baby until I saw somebody's glove. And I would take the glove and I would look at the glove and look at the baby and I would give them the baby. Now, this is not their baby. This is a baby I just took from the parents. And then I would take the glove and I would get some popcorn. And then by the time I was done, I would have 5 or 6 things, and I realized the baby's all the way down there. So I would eventually go back and get the baby and bring it back to the parents. And then I realized this is funny, but it's not very safe. So I started to say, well, I can do different things with babies. I don't have to pass the baby around to people who the baby does not belong to. So in my head, as the Phanatic, I got emboldened to do some things that I had to learn. Well, safety needs to be a big part of this. I learned that relatively quickly, by the way. That didn't take me a year to do, but it wasn't until I saw film that I realized, hey, I can do these things better, non-verbally. I can bring this to life better. And I got much more surgical with the nonverbal over this practice. And the beautiful thing was, you go all the way back to the simple instruction of Bill to have fun became the North Star for being happier, and especially using that directive to engage fun in a way that can help you during the worst of times. And that's really what I love looking back on, was all of the things I was doing was getting me in a position to be where I am now, which is to give everybody the opportunity to do these things to be better.
Dave, let's dive a little bit more into the logistics and the behind the scenes. You mentioned, now I know I'm part of a fraternity that you mentioned, of people who have donned a mascot costume. I was Boomer the Thunderbird for a week or two when the gentleman who played that mascot, that character, went away on his honeymoon over 20 years ago. And like you, I had no formal training, no orientation. They handed me a duffel bag with the costume. I got a whiff of it for the first time and started spraying it with Febreze. I wish I knew then. What I've heard from you is that you can take 1 part vodka and 2 parts water and actually clean it a little bit better. I believe you mentioned also to me that you and your mom came up with a way of washing a costume in the washing machine, even though it was kind of contraband to do so at the time. Yeah. I learned it didn't take me a long time to make some mistakes. I made some mistakes on the first day. They hand me a t-shirt cannon type of thing with no formal training. And I go out there and I forget, just with the sweat dripping down my eyes and all the pressure, and "Hit me with your best shot" is blaring from the speakers. And I'm on the field and I'm feeling the pressure, like the weight of the world. And I shoot the shirt, but I forget to angle it up. So a couple players have to hit the deck in the dugout because the t-shirt's like coming right at their necks. And I go into the office of the general manager after the game, and he says, "It was a good first day or two for you, but I don't want to get a call from the Yankees or from Brian Cashman that one of their top prospects got taken out or lost an eye because you shot a shirt at them. So just get it get it directed at a better angle next time. I was signing autographs for fans in between innings one day, inadvertently signed some things that I wasn't supposed to. I went into this walk-in freezer to take breaks and took the head of the costume off and for the door to swing open and a kid to be absolutely petrified standing outside, seeing that I was exposed and that the Thunderbird had, a human head. I made all kinds of mistakes, but they kept sending me out there because they said, you've got something. There's a way you're going about this that is connecting with people, and you've got minimal experience at this, and we think you're doing a pretty good job. I'll never forget, the just kind of learning through mistakes. And was there a moment that you realized, you described the baby there, but like, was there a moment where you were like, you realized in the moment, hey, maybe I went a little too far here. Maybe I pushed the boundaries of that G-rated fun a little bit?
Well, you just did a whole revisit to my career because I made every mistake that you could make, except for I never lost my head, which I can't take credit for it. But in this world, one of our performers put together a T-shirt that said the mascot's credo is never lose your head. Both literally and figuratively, that can be a great directive. No, I had the beauty of enlightened leadership directing me before I understood what that was. So Bill Giles would see me do something that he felt he either was getting complaints about or he felt that maybe it was stepping over the line. And he'd ask me, why did you do that? And the first thing out of my mouth when he started to, what I thought he was doing was correcting me, was, well, Mr. Giles, I won't do that anymore. He said, no, that's not what I asked you. I asked, why did you do it? And then I would explain to him. And then most of the time it was, well, the fans really love it when I fill in the blank. So then he would actually go out in the stands and say, well, do it tonight. I'm going to be in the stands. And he would sit in the stands. And then he would come back the next day, set up a meeting with me and say, you're right. They liked it. But here's what I'm getting from one teacher's writing me a bunch of letters back in the day that there were no emails. And the teacher was saying the Phanatic's violent. And my kids are thinking it's okay to break a helmet. It was one of the routines that I was doing. And he said, just call this teacher and tell him why you're doing it and why you're going to continue to do it. And that turned out to be a great connection to a teacher who was amazed that anybody was reading his letters and had the Phanatic go to his classroom in his school to teach the kids about being passionate in terms of supporting your fan, your team, and not being violent. It was really way ahead of its time to have it didn't turn into a school program, but that day it was a school program teaching kids how to express themselves without being violent. So it was, without knowing what it was an anti-bullying message that we did that one day. So it's the enlightened leadership that allowed mistakes to happen. And fortunately, because I was taught well by my parents that when somebody gives you trust, don't betray that trust. So I really walked that line as best I could. And when the mistakes weren't really bad, but they would talk to me and collaborate with me. And I went, wow, this is amazing that I'm getting collaboration from somebody that I obviously looked up to and was my supervisor's supervisor, my boss's boss. And it's why I still have a wonderful relationship with Bill Giles today and have been able to really highlight the great things he did through my talks and through a documentary that's being created now called Big Fan, which is all about the Phanatic and how it came to success. We've included Mr. Giles in all of that discussions and telling great stories about it. So for me, I felt blessed, or I look back and know I was blessed because I had enlightened leaders that knew how to care for this. That's why it's lasted for so long. Its 50th anniversary, the Phanatic's 50th birthday will be there in 2027. And, it's just exciting to see all of the great work that has been done behind the scenes to support the Phanatic, and the great work that Tom Burgoyne has done for 35 years as the current best friend of the Phanatic, who's a close friend of mine and a collaborator. So if there's any one lesson to learn from the success of the Phanatic, it is to let your people have some authority to be creative, to go out and do something that might be a little bit different than what leadership might think, and give them some rope to deliver that work. And you will find great success in a company because your people will know you care about them. And once they know they care about it, they show up for you with their whole self and they feel heard. And then they're doing great work for you.
Dave, I'll never forget a moment in a conversation I had with Jesse Cole, the founder and owner of the Savannah Bananas, where he told me that him and his staff, they each come up with 10 new ideas a day because he believes that creativity is a muscle, like a bicep, like a tricep, like an abdomen. If it doesn't get exercised, it atrophies and it weakens and it's hard to reignite. Did you have a process? Did you have a framework to continuously generate new ideas so that you could keep the Phanatic fresh?
It came out of desperation. Yes, I did. And I appreciate that. And I agree with Jesse. And again, a lot of these things that was happening or that I was doing, I wasn't aware of the process. But what I quickly found was you can't create on an island. Some people, comedians, writers, have an ability to do that, but it's very rare. So you need collaborative people and you need creative people and funny people. And so I just started seeking them out. Some would come to me in the organization and say, I love this song, play this song. Did you see this, what happened on a television series? Did you see this new fashion, this new entertainer, this new actor or performer? And I realized I needed to, so I had people that I would go to and say, what do you think about this? And then when Tom Burgoyne, late in my career, 5 to 6 years after I left the Phillies, he and I collaborated well together. We appreciated the same music. We were big Philadelphia sports fans. We were athletes, and we just really clicked. So the first thing you do is you have to realize that you can't be as creative as you could be if you didn't have trusted sources around you that could amplify it. And then you had to set aside specific time to sit down and create. And then you had to, where Jesse, I find it difficult to do what he's saying that they do, because the problem with coming up with 10 new ideas every day is a lot of great ideas don't get shipped. So you can actually have too many great ideas where some get left and forgotten about. So unless you have a great ability to collate and have somebody who is built the way creative people are not to really organize that, you're going to lose some of those. For what we do is creative meetings were at a premium, so we wouldn't have them any more than 2 times a month, because then our goal was, once we came up with creative ideas, we had to ship them. We had to make them and finish them. And then I think one of the reasons why Jesse probably can do that is that their show requires a lot of these ideas to be shipped right away. And they don't need to be perfect. Throw stuff up on the wall. Your audience will tell you what doesn't work. And if you have an audience that doesn't think of you as a performer, like the Phanatic, then you can have bombs. You can fail, and you can fail your way to success. That's what was beautiful about the Phanatic. So I immediately knew when something didn't work, I put it out. I didn't like to do routines that I learned much later was important to me when I left the Phillies, because I was only at a place one night. After I left the Phillies, I was traveling all over the country to work at minor league sporting events of all kinds, soccer, baseball, hockey, basketball. I was showing up to all of those, and I realized I better be good. So I had routines that I knew were good. I had gimmicks and setups and props that I knew would work. But back in that day, it was, hey, let's just go try anything out we can. And as long as it was G-rated, we had success with it. And when it wasn't G-rated, my boss would come to me and say, what were you thinking? Why did you do that? And then many times we would have a G-rated version of what we did. So sometimes making a mistake gives you an opportunity to be even more creative.
This is all so interesting to me, Dave. I mean, the idea that, again, like what Jesse describes as working for them, you kind of flipped on its head and said, hey, we did it a little differently. I see it a little bit differently because of the environment that you were in and the environments that you're in now. But I do think that idea is really powerful. That, it's one thing to come up with ideas, but then what do you do with the ideas? Do you have too many ideas that you never ship anything, that you never execute upon anything? Do you stall at the starting gate, or do you try things and tinker along the way? So many powerful ideas, I think, that we can apply to a lot of different aspects of our work and our lives. Dave, you could probably tell when we were on that train. I mean, I was absolutely enraptured in our conversation, much like I am today. I was taking it and soaking in everything that you were saying. But there was one moment that absolutely stopped me in my tracks. You started to talk about, when we were on the train that night, some of the mental health challenges that you've encountered throughout your life and how the Phillie Phanatic saved your life. That moment in our conversation just stopped me in my tracks. Absolutely is a moment that I will never forget about. Talk about that for a moment. When the mental health challenges started for you, how you navigated those, and why You told me that the Phillie Phanatic saved your life.
Well, fortunately, I didn't do what I thought I was supposed to do during tough times, and that was to quit. Life is going to suck. One of the ways it's counterintuitive about building sustainable happiness is recognize that probably 50% of your life is going to be really ugly stuff. But the benefit of that knowledge is understand that then 50% of your life is going to be really good, or some maturing of that thought. That's the way your life is. It's up and down. There's so many trite, old-fashioned phrases, the ups and downs in life. You got to be ready for the bad stuff too. But that is truly how you get to be aware of being present during all of those and value the suffering and value the good times. For me, it just happened. I had a Leave It to Beaver life. For those who aren't aware of a Leave It to Beaver existence, just Google The Beav and Wally Cleaver and June and Ward Cleaver. And it was a 30-minute television show where the kids would make a mistake and everything would be fixed in 30 minutes and life was beautiful. So that I was living this amazing life. And you can imagine, being my father's son, playing football for my hero, thinking about becoming my hero, getting this job that turned into this amazing success. And life just came up and just smacked me upside the head. And my mother was diagnosed with brain cancer. She was given an 8-month diagnosis of losing her life in 8 months from the beginning of the diagnosis. She died almost one day from the date of the diagnosis to 8 months later. And I couldn't believe that my mother, she was only 59 years old at the time. I was in my early 30s and I'd never experienced anything like this. So to say that I was feeling brutal would be not classifying the feeling well enough. And then with just a few weeks after my mother's memorial service, my 7-year marriage, where I had a young son, Kyle, who was just a few months old, who my mom designated some of the last few months of her life to see Kyle born, that marriage fell apart and my son was taken from me. And I knew I couldn't survive it. I was considering self-harm. I understand how dangerous suicidal ideation can be and how confusing it is when you look back on it. Because it took me a long time to really believe that where I was. But I was thinking I just wanted to stop this. And I had to quit my job because I couldn't do this, right? I couldn't be a clown in the midst of this. And the Phillies were very accommodating and they were trying to support and help me. And that's another thing to know when you are really down, when you are in hopelessness, you're not listening, you're not paying attention, you're just trying to figure out how to end things in any way that you can. And suicidal ideation is part of that. So I talked to the Phillies, we're going to clear my schedule, but I had to do a couple of appearances before my schedule could be cleared because they were important clients of ours. And when I went and did those appearances, I realized I was being soaked and immersed in loving kindness and gratitude. I wasn't Dave, I was the Phanatic. But when Dave took off the super suit and my personality re-engaged, I realized I was a tick above hopelessness. And as bad as hopelessness is to be in, being a tick above it is wonderful because all of those thoughts of self-harm went away when I realized, wait, this is what I need to do. This is making me feel better. During the worst of times, I'm feeling better. Didn't know why. Didn't understand what it was like to be in hopelessness, but certainly was glad that I was out of it. So I wasn't thinking about anything. I was just, okay. I went to the Phillies and said, I need to do as much of this work as I can, which again, they were helpful. Whatever you need, we're going to supply it with you. And, what I say in my keynote was that day of that appearance when I paid attention and it moved me a tick above hopelessness, turned into a week turned into a month. Every day I didn't feel like I was elated or had gotten out of it, but I was not hopeless. I wasn't happy, but I was glad to have the Phanatic by my side. And then many years later, the thing that I love to testify with, not only did my mom give me a skill set that allowed me to create a personality that's going to be doing these amazing things, a beacon of hope and love, not a mascot, because I've seen it happen. And then for me, I see how it happened for me. And then recognizing that she gave me the skill set. Well, she also, that skill set created a personality that saved me from the brutality of seeing my mom die because of brain cancer. And then all these years later, with the beauty of studying deeply, reading every book that you could imagine about positive psychology, the mind, well-being, attention, a focus, all of these things. As I studied, I realized I was getting this naturally. I was so very lucky to have this happen naturally. The Phanatic's personality embodies everything that you need to do to be happier. Two of the biggest things are expressing gratitude. The Phanatic was grateful every time anybody said hello to him. He was delivering kindness. He was a random act of kindness. He made me take the focus off of myself. As a human being, your brain is designed to make you the center of your own orbit and to think that you're the only one that feels the way that you do. Once you can pull away from that, which takes a lot of hard work, the Phanatic, the work I was doing, the high level creative performance I was doing was all the things I needed at that moment. And then I've realized now, since studying positive psychology, that you don't need to have a personality to disappear into. You have the understanding that you need to build the skill set, build the muscle, like Jesse said, for the creative muscle is the same type of muscle that your happiness is. And then your well-being, everything that you do for your well-being makes you happier, but it also makes you healthier mentally and physically. The things you do with positive psychology and well-being, like meditation and mindfulness and being present, those all things will lower stress, which lowers blood pressure, which keeps you safer from coronary artery disease, which allows you then to recognize that fitness in general is good for you. And it provides all these, what we call happy hormones, dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin. These are the happy hormones, the love hormones, oxytocin, that these are things you can stimulate in your own body by just smiling, by hugging the people that you care about that allow you to hug them, that is appropriate hug. For 40 seconds, oxytocin gets released into both of your brains. This stuff is phenomenal. And what's even more amazing to me is how little people know about how to do this. And to save lives, when you are feeling that bad, if you've created great social relationships, which is one of the highest rated aptitudes for building sustainable happiness, is to have great social relationships, not just your family, not just your spouse, but outside friends, that those are the ones that you feel comfortable to say, hey, I'm not doing very well. And they also are attuned to you as a good friend to say, you don't look like you're doing well. How are you doing? That's the simple way to save somebody's life when they're considering self-harm, because they don't understand what's going on and people looking in from the outside don't understand unless they have a good friendship with you. So you can tell I get excited, I get animated, and I love performing again because my stage performance takes the best of my nonverbal and the best of my verbal together. And my job is to just get them to understand one or two simple things that they can do that they'll remember, engage them in funny stories, but tell them about the heart too. So I appreciate the opportunity to talk about it because I believe all of the stuff I get credit for in this world of sports entertainment has put me here to do what I'm supposed to do, which is to go out, make the world a better place, teach us all how to be better human beings, connect with one another, and save lives. And I can say that with great confidence because I've seen it happen because of what my audience, how they respond to me.
Dave, I was blown away by our conversation on the train, and everything you've shared today are ideas that I know I'll be thinking about for a very, very long time to come. And I'm just so grateful that you share your story in such an authentic, raw, and transparent way. I'm grateful. You talked about gratitude. I'm just really grateful for you that our paths crossed and all the ideas and perspectives that you put into the world. The world needs more Dave Raymonds, that's for sure.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you for giving me a platform to talk about it. I appreciate you for saying something to me on the train, which is also good for your happiness, is just to have conversations with strangers when you feel it's safe. It's amazing what just a few sentences back and forth will do for you in your day. So you've done that for me, which led us to this, which I think is helping me get the message out, and really looking forward to the year to come.
Dave, me as well. And I just have to say, without any question, without any reservation, you are a certified tarp puller, forever a member of the Everybody Pulls the Tarp family. And I'll go back to something that you said a moment ago, as I'm giving this stamp of approval that you are a certified tarp puller. You talked about two of the most important ways to increase our happiness and the happiness of those around us is showing gratitude and acts of kindness. Two things that the Phanatic and you, as Dave Raymond, have learned to do so well throughout the course of your life, personally and professionally. I say that my mission is to build a world full of tarp pullers, where there are millions of people who are pulling the tarp in their work, in their community, in their lives, doing little unexpected things that go above and beyond to show other people that they care, to show people that we're all in this together. And I just think of living that everybody pulls the tarp mindset as being grateful for the people around you and showing kindness to others around you and your community. I think the ideas that you and I think about and that we share with the world are so aligned. And I'm just so grateful that we cross paths, as I said moments ago.
Thank you, my friend. And I hope to continue to build a friendship with you too, because I agree with you with the alignment. And then that type of partnership can do some great things.
Dave, thank you so much for being a tarp puller. Thank you for spending some time with me this week. We'll have to talk again soon. All right, my friend?
Yes. I'm pulling tarps as we speak.
All right, we'll talk again soon. Thank you for joining me this week. Be sure to subscribe in your favorite podcast app so you can catch all of our upcoming episodes. And if you are like me and want a world full of tarp pullers, then leave a review to help others find us. You can also follow me on Instagram at AndrewMoses123 and sign up for my email newsletter at everybodypullsthetarp.com/newsletter. I'll share tips and insights to help you achieve maximum success and happiness. Until next time, keep pulling the tarp.